having a baby with my former husband after we divorced. New update. My husband and I conceived after divorce, conflicted and heartbroken, October 25, 2023. This is long. I'm sorry, I've sort of written a novel here. I wanted to post this in a relationship advice group, but the subject matter isn't allowed. My ex-husband and I were married for 10 years, although the last 2 were spent in variations of separation. We've been divorced for roughly a year. We have 3 kids, 10, 8, 5. I'm pregnant with our 4th baby. I don't know if we'll actually be parents to 4 kids or not. I'm so conflicted. We are so conflicted. There was no abuse or cheating in our marriage, although he did sleep with somebody else during our separation. There are a variety of other reasons why we ultimately got divorced. After the initial feelings of failure and heartache, and there was an immense amount of heartache on my end, despite being the one who filed for divorce, we were able to get along pretty well. It became platonic so quickly, and it's like, when we removed the romantic and married relationship from the equation, things got so much better. We split time with our kids 50/50ths. That's really hard for me, because being mom is such a huge part of my identity that I still sometimes struggle to know what to do with myself during his time with the kids. Ultimately, I'm happy that he's a loving, involved father, and I'm glad that they do spend half their time with him. Even if I still sometimes cry over not being with them all the time, we still do things together as a family sometimes. We sit together at our kids' activities, things like that. He has a girlfriend now. She seems nice. He met her not long after our divorce was finalized. It hurt. I cried way too much over it. He waited over 6 months to introduce her to our kids, which I was thankful for. My kids like her. Our youngest child was unexpectedly admitted to the hospital not long ago. He had surgery. In the grand scheme of things, it was a pretty minor surgery, and he's absolutely fine now. But this is my baby, and he had to spend multiple nights in the hospital, so this was a big deal for me. My ex-husband was there the entire time, being a great dad, being a supportive partner to me as I worried over every little thing. We spent all those nights in the hospital together, and I remembered why I married him. He was always able to be the strong, level-headed rock for me. He was the safe person, who I knew would take care of everything and protect me. When we were in the hospital, he told me that I'm the most important woman in his life. Still, when our son was discharged, my ex-husband came back to my house. My baby was home safe. Our other 2 children were excited to be home. After staying with my husband's sister for several nights, we were all together at home like a family again. That night after our kids were in bed, we had sex. I hadn't been hoping for it or planning it. It was just like as soon as the kids were tucked away on their rooms, we were having this intensely passionate, needy, amazing sex that we shouldn't have been having. We went to sleep in my bed, and at some point in the middle of the night, we had sex again. The next morning, we both decided our emotions with the whole situation with our son just got the better of us. We said we didn't regret sleeping together, but that's all it was, and we were just going to go back to our normal divorce lives. We wouldn't make it awkward, just move on. Then I found out I was pregnant. We didn't use a condom. I don't even have condoms in my house anymore. I'm not on birth control. I haven't been since we divorced. I haven't needed it, since I haven't had the time or interest to start dating again. I really wanted to be single for a while. I know I was ovulating when we slept together, which was probably a contributing subconscious factor as to why it happened. My body sees him being a good dad to our kids, and it wants another. My cycle is like clockwork, and we've always conceived on the first try every time we've tried to get pregnant. Our first kid was not even a try. It was 2 weeks before your wedding, you find out you're pregnant and spend your honeymoon with morning sickness surprise. So now I'm about 8 weeks pregnant. I've known for about a week. I just told him this past weekend. I didn't know if I would tell him at all. I realize now that I only told him in hopes that he'd tell me what to do and figure the situation out for me. Only he didn't. I know it makes no sense to have a baby with somebody I chose to divorce. I don't need a 4th child. Why can't I let go of this though? Update. My ex-husband and I have been divorced for about a year. We have 3 kids, ranging from 10 to 5 years old. We have gotten along great since the divorce, better than when we were married. It's almost like we're friends, can do things with our kids, and enjoy being around each other. About 2 months ago, our youngest unexpectedly ended up having surgery and spending several nights in the hospital. He's fine now. My ex-husband and I stayed together with our son the entire time he was in the hospital. When he was discharged, my ex-husband came back to my house or former family home at our son's request. He was just supposed to spend a few hours there, help our son get settled, then go home. However, I guess all of the emotions and being together as a family in our former shared home got the better of us, and we ended up having sex twice that night. No, I'm 9 weeks pregnant. I wasn't on birth control, was on it until after our divorce was finalized, but have been intentionally remaining single for a while, and not involved with men in any way, so was giving my body a break from birth control. Initially we were undecided about what to do, but as of last weekend we made the decision together to have the baby. It feels sort of crazy to me. Definitely not a situation I ever imagined I'd find myself in. I already picture this baby looking just like our other kids. I guess that's why I struggled with the idea of not continuing with the pregnancy, which I know isn't really a valid reason to have a baby. This is probably the last baby I'll ever have. I'm 39, so even if I were to meet a man who I trusted enough to want to have a child with and a future with, I'll be well into my 40s. I plan to be very picky, but I'm not even at the point of wanting to find somebody new yet. We're not getting back together. For now, we get along great when we're not married and living in the same house. We feel it'd be irresponsible to all of our children to attempt to get back together right now because of this. Chances are higher that we'll be able to co-parent this baby successfully if we live separately. However, we are committed to working together to do what has to be done to take care of the baby when he or she gets here. Our kids are doing so great right now, and they seem very happy and secure with the current setup of our lives and homes, so we want to stick with this for now. I don't know if I really understand what I'm getting myself into. Our other kids were all born into a marriage and a two-parent home. I know that sharing custody of a baby will be a lot different than the kids going back and forth between homes. I might be feeling too positive about it, but I think it could work out fine. The new baby will just see this as normal, right? Next thing to worry about will be having to explain this to everyone when we tell them. My family and friends will get over it, but I'm especially concerned with explaining it to our kids. I'm worried our oldest won't take the news well. She also knows what sex is and how babies are made. And for everyone concerned about his girlfriend, she's not his girlfriend anymore. Top-rated comment. These two are 100% getting back together within a year, and then breaking up again in another. Update March 6, 2024. Several people have asked me for an update on my situation. My ex-husband and I are having a baby. My other posts are on my profile. A recap is that we were married for 10 years, divorced for almost 5 years now, and have 3 kids together. We slept together twice during a stressful family time, and I ended up pregnant. We've since admitted we are both still in love with each other, but have not actually declared that we're back together, mainly for the same of our kids. I last post toward the end of January. I'm 28 weeks pregnant. We're having a little girl. As far as the pregnancy goes, it's been like a textbook pregnancy, and so I feel pretty good, just more tired than I ever remember being during pregnancy before. My husband and I continue to live separately and share custody of our kids. We each have them 50% of the time. They're all aware that we're having a baby, and none of them seem to be deeply confused or emotionally damaged by their divorced parents having a baby together. We explained it in an age-appropriate way. Our oldest child was more grossed out that her parents had sex than anything else. Since she now understands what sex is and how babies are made, we've been involving her quite a bit, and she's excited now. I even took her to one of my appointments. She's excited to have a baby sister, and she understands that mom and dad love her and her siblings, that we love this new baby, and that we love each other as people and as parenting partners, without actually being together as a married couple in one house. Meanwhile, my husband and I have started to attend couples counseling. We tried marriage counseling when we were separated before we divorced, but I think we were both already pretty mentally done, so counseling didn't do much for us then. I think we're getting way more out of it now, because we're actually invested in it and putting in a lot of effort. Sometimes I feel great after a session, and at other times I feel not so great and am reminded of reasons why we divorced. Overall, I think it's a good thing for us, no matter what happens with our relationship. We've been sleeping together for the last few months. We already agreed that we won't be seeing other people at this time. I wouldn't be saying while pregnant anyway, and it's not as if I'll even have time with 3 kids and a newborn. We agreed that we will not open ourselves to being with other people while we are working on our relationship and before that conversation is had between us. We are carrying on just as we have been since our divorce. As far as our kids are concerned, Dad doesn't spend the night at our house. We do things together as a family sometimes, but we were doing that even before anything was rekindled between. We're not acting as a couple when we're together as a family. We're friendly with each other, but there is no holding hands, kissing, and so on. Our main concern is our kids. We refuse to say we're back together. If we officially get back together, we really want to feel certain that it'd be for the long term, that we're ready to commit to that. We don't want to give our kids whiplash or do anything to make them seek insecure about our family. We would like to get to that point, but we aren't there yet. I think if my husband had his way, we'd be there. He's ready to say he's there now. He'd love to move back home, but he understands and agrees with my reasoning. I'd love for him to move back home too. Based only on emotions, we both have things to work on, separately and together. I want to be a better spouse this time around. I thought I was being a really great wife, and I was on the surface. I also know that right now I feel so in love, and am hopped on hormones and pregnancy happiness. I always feel super happy, super positive, and super horny during pregnancy. And I know I have to be careful with trusting anything I feel during this time, because it's like I'm on a 24/7 natural high. I think the biggest issue right now is that he's far more let's throw caution to the wind even though he agrees with all of my reasoning, and I want to be way more careful. New update begins here. My ex-husband and I conceived after divorce. Final update. July 1, 2024. I've made a few posts about my husband and I getting pregnant after we divorced. We were married for 10 years and had 3 kids before getting divorced. We got along so much better after we divorced, and we have been really good co-parents during this time. But we were functioning strictly as friendly co-parents. We slept together around 1 year after our divorce was finalized and conceived a 4th baby, which we ultimately decided to keep. Our 4th child, a sweet baby girl, was born at the end of May. She's so perfect, and we both feel we made the right choice to bring her into the world. It was the smoothest, easiest birth I've had, and I take that as a sign. I feel like I fell in love with him all over again during labor and delivery, and that's when I knew I was ready to make our relationship official and public to everyone, including our children. Contrary to all the assumptions, our kids really don't seem to be negatively affected or confused about the baby. And I don't think the newest baby is getting any less love or attention, and our 3 kids born within our marriage had divided by half. This is normal to them now. They understand we're still a family, and no matter what, we'll always be a family whether mom and dad live together. We are still living separately, and technically still maintaining the custody schedule we had in place for our oldest 3 kids. Although, the kids are with me every weekday right now since it's summer break and I'm on maternity leave. We have a different arrangement for the baby, but he does take her overnight a few nights a week. I got our family home in the divorce, and he spends time here with all of us. He has spent some nights here at home to help with the baby, but he doesn't stay in my bedroom quite yet. He has not moved in, although he has tried and continues to suggest it. This is probably the biggest point of contention these days. To me, this feels like the best of both worlds. I love him and truly don't want to be with anyone else. I think I sort of function better and am happier also living in my own space that he just visits. I know it's not the norm, and some might say this means I don't really love him as much as I think. I really believe I'm just one of those people who needs more independence and alone time. And maybe we never would have got divorced in the first place if this had been the arrangement from the beginning. Is it sort of selfish? Maybe. I don't know anyone else with this arrangement, but I know some people out there do this. For all intents and purposes, we're together in a relationship again. We've made it official and exclusive, as juvenile as that sounds. We had already made it official between ourselves, but we hadn't really announced it to family and friends or our kids. We are still in love with each other, or back in love with each other, and we are not seeing anyone else. Our kids have adjusted well. They've been seeing a therapist since we filed for divorce, so that has really helped us navigate some of this. Prior to the baby's birth, we did not tell them that we were essentially in a relationship. Only so long you can keep that a secret from your kids. Even though they're young, they're perceptive. So we've recently explained to them that mommy and daddy love each other, but we get along better living in separate homes, and for now we think this is the best thing for our family. The only problem is that now they keep asking about when we will all live together again. I'm sure it's a little confusing to them, but I'm not sure how we could be handling it any better. We attempted marriage counseling when we separated, before divorce. It was not successful. I don't think either of us was 100% committed to it at the time. He really did not take it seriously back then, but I was more stubborn and resistant than I originally realized. We're in couples therapy now, and it's like night and day compared to last time. I'm scared to live together again, so we aren't going to do that anytime soon. It's not that I don't trust him. I don't trust us as a couple. I refuse to put my kids through all of that again. So, getting remarried and moving in together isn't something in the plans right now. Maybe one day. I hope we can get to that point. I just don't want my kids to have to go through a divorce and splitting households yet again. I feel like they'd lose all trust in us then. On their living situation. I think it might be best for us to find a way to each have our own place next to each other or on the same property, instead of one actual house that we share. Other than not living together, we are together. It's no different than any other couple that's dating but doesn't live together. Well, it's a little different since we share kids and we were once married, and I still usually refer to him as my husband. but not too different. We aren't keeping our relationship a secret anymore, so we aren't pretending to not be together. Everyone knows now, we spend a lot of time together. But yeah, he may eventually want more than I do, as in a relationship where we live together 24/7. At this point, the hubby's XGF was firmly in the rearview mirror, and Oop was still brushing it off as if it is no biggie, but I found one exchange that people may find interesting. Oop downvoted. Yes, he had a girlfriend at the time. It's in my post history, and I'm not trying to hide it, but we have moved well beyond that now. Response. People are downvoting her comment because it is pretty black and white when it comes to cheating. Cheating hurts others, and a lot of people value living in a world and having actions that don't result in hurting others. He was in a relationship and committed to his girlfriend when he decided that he had the right to sleep with his ex and not immediately tell her that he did it. She deserved better than to get trauma from someone who claimed to be committed to her, but was willing to step out on her. Cheating on someone does result in emotional trauma, which will affect how they will view love and relationships going forward. Personally, if he wasn't ready to be in a relationship with her, then he should have left her alone. I'm tired of men in particular getting into relationships with women when they know they're not clearly over their ex-partner. It is a sign of selfishness and pure disregard of another human being's health. She was used as an emotional support and sex object by him, because no one that respects their partner would do something this cruel. So I'm not going to cheer on someone who could have just avoided this entire situation by not being in a relationship when he was clearly not ready to be in one, and hurt someone deeply. Edit. I want to add additional thought as well. Cheating is not only an emotional hurt, but a sign that you give zero care about your partner's health. He was presumably still having sex with his ex-girlfriend after sleeping with no condoms with his ex-wife, with the rate of sexually transmitted diseases and infections increasing in the likelihood of the disease being antibiotic resistant. He told his ex that he had zero care for health and emotional well-being. She had the basic right to know that he slept with another person while still being intimate with her, especially with no form of protection. Not calling the ex-wife dirty, but with the risk of catching a disease that's incurable or opens you up to higher risk of illness. Every person who is engaging in a sexual relationships deserves honesty. All of this may be true. I'm not arguing anything you said, but I'd like to know what everyone on Reddit thinks we're supposed to do about it. We can't go back in time and undo what we did. Maybe Redditors feel that as an act of penance we should not be together, despite very much wanting to. Since that's what we deserve for hurting her in the process, we should never be allowed to move on and have any happiness in our lives, together or separate, because we did something at one time that hurt somebody. Short of publicly flogging ourselves and maybe not allowing ourselves to ever be in a relationship with anyone ever again as a form of self-punishment, what are we supposed to do to satisfy the masses? Neither of us are proud of hurting somebody. AITA for telling my father to get over the vase my son broke. Concluded. AITA for telling my father to get over the vase my son broke. July 11, 2024. When I was a teenager, my father bought a large glass vase, which he filled with wine corks. For years, it stayed on top of a small table in the living room. My family visits him monthly for lunch. Last October, my son was running around my father's living room and accidentally knocked the table over, which caused the vase to fall down and break. I immediately apologized and offered to buy a new vase. My husband and I also cleaned everything up. My father declined my offer to replace it. At the time, he said he understood it was an accident and was just glad my son hadn't gotten hurt. He was 2 years old at the time, and there was a lot of glass on the floor. During the next couple of months, I apologized and offered to pay for a new vase multiple times. My father continued saying it was fine. However, earlier this year, my father started talking about how much he loved the cork vase and how expensive it had been back when he bought it. As the following months went by, his complaints began to escalate. He'd make comments about the fact that my son broke the vase almost every time we came over. Occasionally, he'd also joke that we should plan our visits with longer notice so that he could hide his valuables from my kid. Last week, he threw a party at his place, which we attended. A friend of his who hadn't visited in a while noticed the vase was gone and asked about it, to which my father replied that my little shit had broken it and I hadn't replaced it. My husband was nearby and heard it. After the party, I confronted my father, and we fought. He said that he had the right to complain about the fact that my son had damaged his property. I told him that while he has the right to be upset, the fact that he declined my offer to buy him a new vase does not entitle him to complain about me not doing it. He can either retract his forgiveness and work something out with me or get over the vase and stop blaming my toddler for the accident. I won't have him calling my son names over this. My father is still insisting I'm in the wrong here. AITA. Edit. I recommend reading my comments. Plenty of people are making assumptions that I'm clarifying in my replies. Relevant comments. Commenter. The solution would be to buy him a vase for Father's Day, His Day, Christmas, every holiday. Buy him a vase in perpetuity. Make him so plentiful with vases he wishes he never sees another vase again. Problem solved. Commenter. NTA. FFS. Your son was a toddler doing toddler things. Your dad should have toddler-proofed the house. You offered to pay for a new vase. He declined. He can STF you about it. I always thought collecting and displaying wine corks was bizarre. Hey, look at how much I drink, everyone. Commenter. I wasn't allowed to run around in others' homes. I blame the parents and your father for complaining. Also, why wouldn't you just buy a new vase anyways? My dog broke my dad's glass water bottle. It was a special bottle that cost him $100. He said don't worry about it, since he had it on the edge of the couch, and all my pup did was walk by. I literally found the same bottle and shipped it to his home. He was super happy, although he said he didn't need another. When my friends come over, we go to a park so the kids can run. At my grandma's house, if the kids want to play, we sit on the porch. Children should learn boundaries of where to run and not to run. He's a toddler, so he should have had some toys or took him outside. I can't imagine allowing my child to run around my dad's house. He has a lot of glass. He's wrong for complaining, but you also should have just replaced it. Commenting here because this is the most voted comment about this subject. I understand the assumption that I allow my toddler to freely run around people's homes. That is not the case. In this specific situation, my son started running around seconds before the accident happened. I just wasn't quick enough to stop him. In subsequent visits to anyone northeast, including my father, my husband and I have managed to stop him sooner. My son is generally a quiet kid, so this behavior isn't that common. Also, I offered to replace the vase more than once that day. He said no, so I didn't buy one. After that refusal, I had no reason to believe my father still wanted me to replace the vase. If someone gave me a similar offer and I declined, I would not expect them to go through with it, nor would I blame them for not doing so. In response to a deleted comment, Boop explains why this has become a problem now. I haven't mentioned the vase in months. My father is the only one doing so. The only reason I'm getting involved now is because his comments are getting worse. Commenter. How old is your dad? Hostility and personality changes can be linked to dementia. 60. Commenter. I think you should have just replaced the vase. Asking him if he wants you to, you were putting an emotional burden on him. The very act of asking implies not replacing it is an option to you. This was something he had valued for years, and to you it was optional. That hurt him as much as it getting broken to begin with. But he probably doesn't have the words to express that. He might not really have any idea why it's also very enraging to him. He might just be feeling the emotions without digging into theory. But it has always been your obligation to replace the vase. No Tofrica replace it, or give him a Nido replace it, but actually go out, find the absolute closest match, buy it, and bring it to him. YTA. There was a mix of responses, but overall, Boop was voted not the a-hole. Update July 22, 2024. After reading your comments, I decided to offer to buy my father a new vase again. I explicitly told him this would be the last time I'd make that offer. If he said no and continued to complain about it, he wouldn't be allowed to see my son until he'd calmed down. He eventually agreed. The store he'd bought the original vase from does not exist anymore, so I started doing some research. I found one I thought was very similar at a furniture store near my place. I'd bought vases from them before, so I knew they had great quality. On Saturday, we went on our monthly lunch at my father's place, and took the opportunity to give him the new vase. He seemed grateful at the time, and had a cute moment with my son as they filled it up with the corks. I thought this was done. But the next day, my father called me. He had looked up the new vase online, and noticed it was less expensive than he expected. Then he asked, "Are you sure this is the best you could find?" That's when I said screw it, I'm done with his passive aggressiveness. I told my father we're no longer going to his place for anything. If he wants to see my family, he can come to ours. He protested, but I held my ground. My father did not communicate his wishes at any point, and still complained about the outcome. I'm done watching my family be accused of being bad people, and I don't want this behavior to extend to my son any more than it already has. So this is where we stand now. My father doesn't like driving to my place, so I'm not sure about the future of our monthly lunches. I love my father, but I am extremely disappointed in him. If all this means I will see him less than usual for a while, I might be a little glad. The time apart might be good for us. My greatest concern is my son's relationship with his grandfather, which I will try to encourage. Edit. Please read my comments before making assumptions about me, my child or my father. The vase I bought would roughly translate to $100 USD. I don't live in this. My father told me he doesn't remember the original's price, only that it was more expensive than that. He was also not attached to the vase itself, but to the corks that were inside it, which he managed to salvage. I'm certain of the new vase quality. Relevant comments. Commenter. NTA. Well, unless the new vase is obviously shoddy, which isn't the case from your description. His behavior is bizarrely ridiculous. I think you've made the best possible solution to this issue. At this point, it's up to him to humble up. I don't regret buying the vase, but I've done my part. I'd never react to this the way my father did. And I'm very confident about its quality. Commenter. NTA. He had looked up the new vase online and noticed it was less expensive than he expected. Who does that with a family member when they've done their best to put things right? My greatest concern is my son's relationship with his grandfather, which I will try to encourage. Kudos for that, but your dad needs to realize what's important, make an effort. I'm hoping he does. I grew up pretty distant from all my grandparents, so it's always been important to me that my kid gets to be closer to his family. That said, I'm very well aware that it's my father's responsibility to make an actual effort here. Commenter. Please make sure your son doesn't become the butt of grandpa's "here's the little shit who breaks things" jokes. A funny family story can leave a permanent imprint on the target. Commenter. The store he'd bought the original vase from does not exist anymore, so I started doing some research. I found one I thought was very similar at a furniture store near my place. I'd bought vases from them before, so I knew they had great quality. Great job, up. Love the way you handled the situation. It was godly no matter what others say. You are anti. You not only replaced the vase, you found a similar one, and who cares the price? Several commenters mentioned a possible dementia diagnosis. This was the best one. You did not respond to any of these. Commenter. I would like to throw you a different line. Have you considered the fact that your dad might have dementia? A dementia patient can fixate on things and ask repetitive questions about them. It just now occurred to me that your dad may well be experiencing early signs of dementia. If it is dementia, you can get him into treatment, which may slow the progression of the disease. I'm a social worker who works with dementia patients. AITH for telling my sister she is not a good mother and her kids deserve better. I 29, female, am currently living at my parents' place 66, Malay divided by 59, female, along with my sister 34, female, and her kids 16, female, 14, female, 10, now, and 11 months. I moved in to help care for my mother, who has cancer, and to drive her around. My father can't drive due to a stroke, and my sister lost her driver's license. Since I work from home and have a flexible schedule, I am the best option for assisting my parents. The kids were a mess. My sister essentially has her own apartment in the house, so my parents never really checked in on her or the kids. One day, I noticed my 10-year-old nephew's hair was matted. I took him to a hairstylist, who told me his hair was molding. My sister works during the day, but often doesn't come home until midnight and goes straight to sleep. I found this out because my niece asked me to show her how to cook, as her sister was getting physically sick from the ready meals in the fridge. One day, I heard the baby crying and realized my sister was leaving the baby at home. The 16-year-old believes it's her responsibility to take care of all the kids. She is burnt out and is failing many of her classes. When she found out she had to redo her grade, her mother screamed at her. I stepped in and told my niece it's okay, and that I will help her get her grades up next year. I tried to talk to my sister, but she always ended up crying and saying how hard it is to be a single mom. However, I found out that her ex-boyfriends are sending her money for the kids, but she chooses to work part-time while trying to become a beauty influencer. Meanwhile, I have been taking care of the kids. They have become very attached to me and spend all their time in my part of the house. My sister hasn't seemed to care much. The main issue came when my 14-year-old niece won a prize for young storytellers. She wrote a story, clearly coping with her home life and her abusive mother. Her story was published in a magazine. She received $500 and won a one-week summer camp. At the ceremony, my niece thanked her siblings, my mother, and me, saying, "Thank you for being the mom I never had." My sister left abruptly and reappeared yesterday. She repeatedly asked if I was saying she was a bad mother. I tried to stay calm, but she kept pushing until I finally exploded and unloaded everything: the neglect, the lack of supervision, the emotional abandonment. I told her she was not fulfilling her responsibilities as a mother and that her kids deserved better. My sister, still furious, refused to listen and continued yelling, saying she was doing her best and I had no right to interface. I told her that her best was not good enough, and that her children were suffering because of her actions. I reiterated that the kids deserved a stable, nurturing environment, and that I couldn't stand by and watch them be neglected. My sister ran away and told her daughter that if they hated her so much, then they were dead to her. My parents are confused and hurt that they didn't see what was going on. My mother has been crying since she found out, and my father, who has a temper problem, screamed some very threatening things at my sister. My nibblings are distraught. The 10-year-old is furious at the 14-year-old for saying what she did because he thinks their mother is going to take them away, and the 16-year-old had a huge panic attack and fell down. I haven't properly slept, and my sister is sending me messages every 10 minutes, telling me their life was good before me. I am at the end of my rope. Did I do something wrong? Should I have just kept my mouth shut?